All right, so you're wondering, how is this a Kinetic Energy 1085 video? It's not about the F-150. It's not about guns, ammunition, ballistics, and all that stuff. Well, you forgot there's one more thing about this channel listed on my community tab. It's about auto mechanics. All right, we're gonna get into the the thumbnail picture in a minute, but this is kind of important. I don't want to jump right to it because I think it's important for people to know what they're getting into and how to buy a used car. So we're at that stage in life where we have to buy our daughter her first car. Rule number one, don't ever buy your child, doesn't matter how responsible they are, a brand new car. They just don't take good care of them. So if you're thinking of buying a used car, you need to have some kind of mechanical knowledge or background. First couple things you do, the ones that are right out in front of you. Look for damage. For example, one car I looked at today where the top of the driver's side door, where it meets the roof corner, had a bunch of dents going all along the side of that car. Quiz, what do you think that means? Okay, not a complete rollover, but that car ended up on its side, okay? So you're looking for damage, and there was dents on the roof. Next thing you know, you're looking for common sense things. Check the oil. Is it at level? Is it extremely black? Does it have any gunk on the dipstick? If you can check the transmission fluid, the darker it is, the worse shape it is. If you can't check the transmission fluid, first thing you do is you start the car. Do not let them bring the car to you, because if it has some kind of problem, they're going to try to mask it. You start the car from cold. So here's the first thing I did. You're going to see my camera and right at the exhaust of this Jetta that I was looking at today for my daughter. And the reason why I put the camera to the tailpipe when I started it is that I wanted to see if there was any blue smoke coming out of the exhaust. If there's blue smoke coming out of the exhaust, that means your piston rings, so inside your engine, those cylinders that go up and down, there's a ring seal around them. Most of the time, it means those rings are bad, so you're burning oil. So check for blue smoke when you start the car up. Now, when you start the car up, if you hear a grinding, cranking noise while you're cranking the car, that usually means it's a crankshaft bearing. Boom, engine kaboom, don't buy the car. If you start it up, it starts up, and all of a sudden you hear a brrr real quick, that's chain rattle. Most of the time, that's chain rattle. So chain rattle means you have a timing chain in your engine, and when you start the car, at where your crankshaft is, there's an oil pump. That oil pump is starting to pump oil up to your lash adjusters and all these other components of your engine. But there's tensioners that push on guide rods that your chain is resting on to create tension. So if your oil pressure is bad or your tensioners are bad, you're gonna crank it. Let me try to do it. You start it, you hear like this rattle. Sounds like taking a knife and rattling it in a tin can. That usually means chain rattle, and because of your timing chain tensioners. When you take the oil dipstick out, smell it also. Does it smell like antifreeze? If it smells like antifreeze, it's kind of like that sweet smell. Take off the oil cap. If there's any milky substance collecting in the oil cap, more than likely, yes, there are exceptions here and there, it's a head gasket. The head gasket separates the top half of your engine from the lower half of your engine. And if that vehicle ever overheated, the heat and the expansion just took that gasket and just kind of compromised it. So now you're going to be leaking oil and coolant where your head gasket is. But of course, it's called a head gasket because, yes, it goes around. It's the washer that separates top half from the lower half, right where your cylinder bores are. So that's another thing to look at. When you start it, again, from cold, just sit there and put it in forward, drive, reversed, manual, whatever it is. If there's any like some kind of a slam, the transmission fluid is either bad or your transmission is bad. Won't get into all the details of how, but sometimes If you check the transmission fluid and it's really dark, it may just need a fluid change. I had that happen on a car years ago. So those are some bare bones things to look at. But now you're also going to see, if you can see in this video, I'm also recording the engine. So if you can see where the belt is turning, there's a tension ring. So this tension ring you push on release the rubber belt. If you see it, it's shaking like this. So if it's shaking, the belt's on top of there as well. So eventually that belt will fray and come apart, and if that happens, basically you're now running off your battery, and then your engine will overheat, causing that head gasket problem. So that was one thing I found with the Jetta. And then we're going to talk about the Carfax. So I Googled the VIN on this Focus we're going to talk about, and I'm going to show you just some pictures of some of the things that came up about the car. But it was the car's entire history, minor accident, but do a Carfax. You also want to drive the car. Again, you're looking for delayed shifts, surging, where you're driving, you feel it kind of give, and then it goes into gear. That's a surging. A hard shift, you know, it's like doosh, 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 shifting into gear. Shift solenoids. It could be, usually it's something valve body related. So as you're driving it, the shifts should be smooth, even if your fluid is not in perfect condition. So pay attention to these things when you're buying a used car, and do the Carfax. So now let's get into this Focus. Oh man. So this Focus worked out perfectly. Just some, you know, my daughter picked it out. So the year, the mileage, the price was all really good. And the Ford Focus is a pretty reliable car, minus 4 years that they made this vehicle. So before I went out to actually test drive it, what I did was I Googled the VIN, because it was on the website, and the Carfax came up. So it said cooling system checked, remember that, and it had some minor accident in the front, and the transmission was recalibrated. So what I found was that this car has what's called a dual clutch transmission, or DCT transmission. They made it from, I think, 11 to 15, and those vehicles that came with that transmission were an absolute mother-loving nightmare. And so bad where Ford recalled tons of them, discontinued making the transmission because of the problems, and then extended the warranty to 10 years, and 10 years, 150,000 miles, I believe. So when I found this out, if you look up a dual clutch transmission, long story short, just some of the minor research I did, here's one thing. If someone put a review on Google, like if you look at forums and stuff like that, when you're in traffic, there have been many reports of the transmission overheating, just sitting in traffic. Who the hell wants to buy a car where the transmission overheats and pretty much goes into limp mode just from sitting in traffic? So that's probably where the coolant check on the maintenance history came from. And I guess what it is it could be dry clutch or wet clutch. There's two clutches, one for the even gears, one for the odd gears. There's 6 gears. I'm just telling you some of the mechanics about it. But it's basically a nightmare transmission. So here's what else I did. In the Carfax, it tells you what dealership it was sold from. I'm going to put the original sticker I found on here. It all showed up on the Carfax. So I called that dealership, and I just asked them. I said, I'm looking to buy this used car, and I'm hearing about this dual clutch transmission that was made from 11 to 15. It was in this car, and it looks like it was serviced here. I said, should I buy this car? And the lady actually said, do you want my honest opinion? I said, absolutely. She said pretty much as firmly as she can, do not buy that car. She said, even if it drives fine right now, don't buy it. And she was very adamant and serious about it. And I took her word for it, and I dodged a bullet. Because think about it. You know, my daughter's 15. I wanted her to have this car to continue to learn how to drive before she got her license, so that the car she's driving is the one that she was kind of learning on, even though I taught her when she was 12. All you freaking police out there don't want to hear it because you don't know who I am anyway, and you didn't catch me. So anyway, yeah, I taught my daughter how to drive since 12. So number one, there's all my tips on if you're going to buy a used car, things to look for, things to listen for, smell. And if you maybe you came to this video because you're looking at buying this 2014 Focus. My recommendation, don't do it. I have not been able to find a car as decent as that since, you know, I all these cars I looked at today, you know, the damage, they literally either reeked of cigarettes, the inside was torn the frickin' hell apart, they smelled like they were sitting in the bottom of a lake and pulled out and baked in the sun to dry off. I just can't get over how people take care of their vehicles. Anyway, I hope this helps, and maybe someone else can dodge a bullet. I didn't do it. I didn't do it. So, again, back to making some videos. I'm kind of getting bored of doing shorts anyway. Semper Fi. Get